Okay, thank you, Doug. So Doug and I have done this presentation at least I think a couple of times, or co-presented different audiences. So Doug already covered the ballot language, so I won't go into the details of this. The point I will make, and I don't believe that it was the intent of Michigan Energy, Michigan Jobs, or anybody that's promoting it. The intent was to try and use essentially PA295 as much as possible to minimize the uncertainty and ambiguity. If this were to pass, we could have some certainty around it's going to be run similar to the way things are being run right now. But in essence, these 300 or so words, DTE believes are very ambiguous and really opens the door if this were to pass. And we're not quite certain what we would end up with. So PA295 took about 2 years of collaboration with multiple stakeholders, the legislature, MPSC, the staff. Everybody had an opportunity to come in, have an opinion, and that's what it took to design this. Trying to duplicate that in a ballot initiative and a constitutional amendment with only 300 words, we don't think is doable. I'm going to skip through these. These are just highlights of PA295, which we talked about this morning. This is a slide I showed earlier. I want to make sure everybody understands and appreciates that DTE is committed to renewables. We were strong advocates of the 10% RPS. We feel that 10% is a good number at this point in time. Just before the holidays, this past year, the Michigan Senate Energy and Technology Committee met, had a 2-day session where all stakeholders could come and talk about PA295. It was meant to analyze PA295 and talk about, is it working, is it not, what needs to be improved. That report, I believe it was on one of Julie's earlier slides, that report was issued mid-February, and the takeaway from the report was PA295 is working. They made a couple of administrative recommendations to make it work smoother, but by and large, there was no argument for or against moving the 10% up or down, and we're fully supportive of that. So again, we're investing between ourselves and third parties about $3 billion. This represents these projects, about half of that to date. We'll spend the other half here over the next several years. So we have a strong commitment to renewables. But we believe amending the Constitution for something as costly, important, as complicated as an RPS is not a good decision for our state. Cementing that policy into the Constitution is really a multi-billion-dollar bet. That once it's in the Constitution, it takes a constitutional amendment to change it. It's not a legislative change at that point. So if you look at this next slide, this is, as a utility, what we're trying to manage when we're making our investment decisions. We don't have a crystal ball. We're trying to look out decades into the future, and our investments are measured in the billions of dollars. They're large, very costly. The fewer options we have to manage those investments, driving towards the best cost to our customers, all else being equal, that's what we drive towards. We have to manage things like future natural gas prices, climate change, unknown environmental regulation, transmission costs, the performance of renewables, and this is the not in my backyard, siting challenges. These are all the things that we try and manage when we're building out our portfolio. And we feel by cementing this 25% in the Constitution removes some of that optionality from our ability to manage these costs on behalf of our customers. Our estimate of what it would take to get to the 25%, I agree with Doug, it would take probably just about all wind to be able to get there. There'll be a little bit of some biomass, maybe a little bit of solar. These two bars right here represent PA295. The state's building about 2,000 megawatts, or we'll have about 2,000 megawatts total in place to meet the 10% standard. To get to the 25%, we're going to build roughly 5,000. And let me just caution everyone, when you're looking at my slides and Doug's slides, these are point estimates. In our decision-making process, we try not to rely on point estimates. And again, when you're trying to talk about decades worth of projections and billions of dollars, we try and find a baseline and then we sensitize around that. There's all kinds of variability and volatility which is driven by this last page. So these are just kind of a best guess point estimate, but it can be very volatile and very variable. So let's say around 5,000, that gets us to 7,000 total. That looks to be about a $10 billion cost overall for the state. Again, that number can fluctuate up and down. We've seen installed costs on wind drop precipitously in the recent years, but we're starting to see a trough at this point in time, largely driven by commodity price increases and the fact that the supply-demand curve has kind of levelized itself out. So we're starting to see installed costs ratchet up a little bit, but that's being more than offset by the greater production, the higher capacity factors that we talked about earlier. In general, though, this 5,000 megawatts incremental, that's about 3,000 incremental turbines with 2 megawatt or so average. Right now, the average size wind turbine is 1 to 1.8. I've got to check. I think, Doug, you had a slide up there I want to grab you on. This comes out to be around 480,000 acres.
For project area, yes, I agree.
For land space, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a footprint of about 5 times the city, the size of the city of Detroit. So we're talking about a lot of land. And what's unclear to us is at what point do you get to a saturation where the communities just won't take anymore? We had a really good dialogue this morning around challenges, and I definitely sense a lot of frustration and anger over some of the developments or just kind of wind siting in general. I hope that we at CMS have articulated, we take that very seriously. It's the #1 priority when we go into a project is working with the community, and we want to do it right. You get to a certain point where you can't do that anymore, so what happens is you may not be able to site all this wind in the best wind areas of the state, like the thumb, which means as you move into lesser wind regimes, you need to build more capacity, more turbines to get the same electrical output. So again, another large uncertainty that we don't know how to project right now. In addition, jobs creation certainly can be a benefit of renewable energy. We've had some good success stories in the state. One, we actually worked with Skip, Doug, and his team on helping a turbine manufacturer locate here, so there have been pockets of success. But today, the wind manufacturing market is in turmoil. You're seeing, these are a couple of data points of some of your larger turbine manufacturers, particularly Vestas, the largest turbine manufacturer in the world, is talking about plant slowdowns. They're having a lot of challenges, just the demand's not there right now. So the state is, the United States and the world in general is oversupplied with wind turbine capacity. So it's not clear to us if we pass an RPS, if we'll necessarily capture manufacturing jobs